Good afternoon, Dustbath Emerald. Today we have a different kind of story. It's a fable set in a different country. It's a legend that people believe is true, and it's called The Finger Eater. So let's have a little look and see what he's all about. Okay, Chapter 1. Long, long ago, in the cold lands of the north, there lived a most unusual troll. There's an illustration there on the front page of him hiding behind a rock. Like all the hill folk, so called because they usually made their homes in the hole in the hill, he was humpbacked and bow-legged, with a frog face and bat ears, and razor-sharp teeth. But he grew up, though like all other trolls, not very tall, with an extremely bad habit. He liked to eat fingers. Have a look at this. He's dreaming about eating fingers. Let's see how he gets on. Ulf, for that was his name, always went about this in the same way. Whenever he spied somebody walking along the hills, he would come up smiling broadly and hold out a hand and say very politely, "How do you do? How do you do?" So there he is, attempting to get somebody's finger by shaking their hand. Now trolls are usually rude and extremely grumpy, and they don't care how anyone else does, so the person would be pleasantly surprised to meet a jolly one and would hold out their hand to shake it. Then Ulf would take it, and quick as a flash he would bite off a finger with his razor-sharp teeth, and he would run away as fast as his bow legs would carry him, chewing like mad and grinning all over his froggy face. There he is, looking very happy with himself. Strangers visiting those parts were amazed to see how many men, women and children were lacking a finger on their right hand, especially children, because their fingers were more tender and much sought after by Ulf. Nobody lacked more than one finger, because even small children weren't foolish enough to shake hands if they met Ulf a second time, but instead they would run away with their hands deep in their pockets. So there's a picture here of some children playing, but if you look close enough they've got a few fingers missing, and that's where they've unfortunately bumped into Ulf. And there's some children running away after Ulf is trying to take a second finger, and there he is saying bother. It was usually the index finger that Ulf nipped off, because it was the easiest to get at, so that many children grew up pointing with their middle finger and holding a pencil between their middle and their third. But sometimes Ulf went for the little ones. Thumbs, for some reason, he did not seem to fancy. Strangely, the people of those lands were tolerant and long-suffering, and they seemed to put up with Ulf's bad habit. What can't be cured must be endured, they would say, and since they considered it was no use crying over spilt milk, they wasted no tears over lost fingers, but they got on with their lives with only 7 fingers. That's all about to change in Chapter 2, because we're about to meet a young girl who wants to teach him a lesson. And here she is. Chapter 2. Who knows how long Ulf the Troll might have continued in his wicked ways if it had not been for the little girl named Gudrun. Gudrun was the only child of a reindeer farmer. She had golden hair, which she wore in a long plait, and eyes the colour of cornflowers. Indeed, she was as pretty as a picture, looking as though reindeer butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. She was also a sensible child who paid no attention to what her parents told her, One evening, as they all sat around the fire outside their tents, Gudrun's mother said to her, "Remember, you must never shake hands with a troll." She stirred the cooking pot that was suspended above the flames. The hand that held the ladle had no little finger. With its right hand, on which the index finger was missing, Gudrun's father picked up a stick to put on the fire. And here they are giving her some advice on what she should do if she ever meets a troll. No matter how politely the troll calls out, "How do you do?" "What should I do instead, then?" "Put your hands in your pockets and run," said her mother. "But why?" said Gudrun. "Didn't either of you do that?" "When we were both children," said her mother, "we didn't know about the finger eater. We were among the first in the district," said her father, "to lose a finger, but now everybody knows." "Why don't all the mothers and fathers warn their children then?" said Gudrun. "They do," said her mother, "but sometimes the children don't listen, or they just forget. Make sure you remember." Gudrun thought deeply about this while she was out on the hill, helping her father to herd the reindeers as they grazed their way across the slopes. It's all very well, she thought, to tell children not to get their fingers eaten, but someone ought to tell that troll not to eat them. Eating people's fingers is wrong. So Gudrun has a plan, and she decides he should be stopped. And being not only a very pretty but also a very resolute child, she resolved that she would stop the finger eater forever. But how? "Father," she said, as she sat milking one of the reindeer, "how big is a troll?" "No taller than you, Gudrun," said her father, "but much, much stronger. Have you ever met one?" For an answer, her father held up his right hand. Poor father, missing his finger. "Oh yes," said Gudrun, "but since then, I mean." "No," said her father, "but I've quite often seen the hill folk for just a moment, and then they scuttle down their holes, for they are all shy of people, except for Ulf, the finger eater." "You have never seen him again?" "No, and nor will you, I hope." But not long after, Gudrun did. Chapter 3. This is how it starts. Gudrun sitting nicely and waiting and playing. Even in those bleak Northlands there are days in the short summer which are bright and warm and flower-filled, and on such mornings Gudrun's father handed her a flask. It was made out of reindeer skin. It was stopped with a cork made out of a reindeer horn, and it was filled with fresh, rich reindeer milk. "Be a good girl and take this to your mother," her father said, for the herd's grazing grounds were not far from the family tent, and it did not occur to him that she might come to any harm. I think he's going to be wrong. Gudrun set off across the hill, carrying the flask in her right hand. Before she had gone far, she saw a steep bank and a large hole. Straight towards her came a gaping mouth and a friendly smile. He outstretched his hand. "How do you do?" he said politely. "The finger eater," thought Gudrun, and she remembered her parents' advice, to put her hands in her pockets and run away. "But I won't," she said bravely. "I won't do that. Now is my chance." "I'm sorry," he said, "but I cannot shake your hand because I'm holding a milk flask. You could always hold it with your other hand," said Elf, for he was determined. "I could," said Gudrun, "but I won't. I've heard of you. I see you are Ulf the finger eater." "Well, well," said Ulf, passing his tongue across his razor-sharp teeth. "What is your name, little girl?" "It is Gudrun." "Eating fingers is wrong," the clever little miss said to Ulf. "How can I trick her?" he thought. He had a serious, thoughtful face. "You're right," Gudrun said. "It's wrong to eat people's fingers. I see that now. But at least give me a drink of milk." "Not on your life," said Gudrun. "Thanks to you, both my mother and father are short of a finger. How time flies! I've probably had hundreds of fingers since then." "Well, well, you're not having 101," said Gudrun, "but on second thoughts I'll give you that drink." And out popped the cork. She jerked the flask so that the milk shot straight into Ulf's face, and she ran away as fast as she could. Okay, so we're on chapter 4, and tomorrow we'll find out how the finger eater finishes. We'll be doing lots of literacy based around this character. He's very interesting. Okay, and there's a little glimpse of what's to come on chapter 4.